is a little bit more specific. If I violate the control, that means I not implement the control, then I myself vulnerable to fraud. So the violation, the consequence of my violation is the potential loss that I may have due to fraud or opportunistic behavior. There are no other party apply the sanction on me, but the sanction is my share, is my risk. The control is specified by the control control activity, include the checking activity or evidentiary activity, and who perform the control activity, and when here is maybe consider that the location of control in a procedure. Where should we enforce the control into the procedure? Traditional redesign approach with the background I provided so far, I propose a redesign methodology for the redesigns of inter-organizational procedure. Traditional approach try to replace or look at the current flows of data and information and try to replace by a new electronic procedure, for instance. But here, what I'm doing is trying to look at the underlying deontic purpose and explicate the underlying deontic purpose in what I call a deontic process. And then, based on the deontic process, I analyze the deontic process to derive a necessary control. The third step is for a given set of control requirements derived in the second step, identify the best control solution. And finally, I generate the procedure which include the deontic effect and the control solution derived in step 3 into a procedure. We have a number of research. I complete this step. One of my research is an abstract architecture that I wrote with Professor Lee and Professor Duta. He tried to implement a control into a procedure. Another paper that Professor Lee and Duta and Kenneth Henry wrote is about sharing a control solution among various institutions. So we have a number of research in this area. This area is remain untouched right now because this may relate to evaluating the cost and the effectiveness of control and so forth. Relate to certain research on quantitative issue. This dissertation focused on the first two areas, modeling deontic process and deriving control requirement. And the vision of my research in the future include the complete redesign cycle. So the objectives of the dissertation is to develop a formal method for deriving control requirement from deontic process format. So you can see here, the main purpose is in these two areas. In order to derive control requirement, we need to formalize the deontic process. So these two goes together and will be accomplished in the dissertation. The vision is to develop a formal method for redesigning inter-organizational procedure, with the main objective is to improve the efficiency of the procedure without compromising control. So the vision, you may envision like the whole redesign cycle, and the dissertation focus on the first two steps of the redesign cycle. I identify a number of challenges in order to achieve the objective. The first challenge is how to model a deontic process. The deontic concept comes from the contract between the parties, comes from the regulation or convention that govern the transaction. So in order to model a deontic process, we need some kinds of a legal expert to accept into the contract law and trade law and so forth, to extract these concepts, right, obligation, power, permission, and so forth. That kind of thing is far beyond the scope of the research. What I do here is to provide the tool, the formal tool, that can help them to explicate the deontic process. They have the knowledge about certain deontic aspects of the transaction, and we provide them the tool for them to explicate the knowledge that they have. The second thing is how to identify control principle. Traditional methods for deriving control or for the analysis of control in inter-organizational or internal procedure mainly apply the principle from the auditing and accounting. even though the domain of accounting and auditing is a well-established domain, these principles are mainly the rule of thumb. There are no analytical foundation to justify why a principle is needed. The thing here, my approach here is slightly different. I provide an analytical approach. I look at the underlying deontic process, identify potential inconsistency between the deontic process and documentary procedure, and then propose the way to identify fraud potential and control requirement to prevent the fraud potential. And I arrange the fraud potential and control requirement into a set of control principles. And then, in order to facilitate the automatic analysis of control, I provide a formal representation of control principle in what I call the control rule. And finally, I develop a working prototype to implement the deontic process model and implement the control rule in a running system. The overall solution here is sketched based on the technique of model checking. I apply the model checking. But instead of applying the model checking to check some technical property like deadlock, live lock, or reachability, and so forth, that commonly used in hardware and software systems. Here I apply the technique of model checking to identify the fraud potential in the procedure and the right to control requirement to prevent the fraud potential. So the input of the model checking in a program, what I call here the control requirement generator, is a program developed based on the model checking technique. The input to this program is a deontic process model and certain domain knowledge, like the trust relationship between the parties, like the witnessability between the parties, and so forth. These information will form a transition system, a state transition system M. And a set of control rules formalized here in the form of P and Q, where P is a fraud indicator. A fraud indicator will indicate certain properties of the deontic process that is vulnerable for fraud. And Q is a control requirement in order to prevent this fraud potential.